All right, a very good morning once again to you. It's good to see you this Monday morning and happy new month. I hope that the month has started on a positive note. This is Your World. My name is Winnie Lubembe, and of course, like I said, today we're talking about something that is equally important, and that is on the Women's Economic Empowerment Hub. Of course, it's all about Kenyatta University. So what exactly is this all about, and how important is the same? And of course, there's also an upcoming conference which you do not want to miss as far as the Women's Economic Empowerment Hub, again, by Kenyatta University is concerned. But as per usual, let's begin with COVID-19 numbers, because like we always say, we're not out of the woods yet. We need to understand that COVID-19 is still here with us, and it's up to us to take the initiative to protect ourselves and those ones around us. So let's begin with the global figures. We're up until now 554,387,542 total number of COVID-19 cases reported across the globe, 6,361,436 total number of deaths recorded across the globe, but 529,268,250. This is the total number of persons who recovered from COVID-19, again across the globe. But let's come back home, and according to the Health Ministry, which again releases the statistics every single day, 334,249 is what the situation looks like now in the country as far as COVID-19 is concerned. And of course, we've also lost more than 5,000 people to COVID-19. But then again, at the same time, our recoveries are at more than 300,000. So, like some of the measures that were reintroduced recently by the Health Ministry, it's up to us to just take individual responsibility and make sure that we keep ourselves and those ones around safe, and also halt the spread of the same, because we're dealing with a sixth wave of COVID-19. So, that aside, let's talk about Kenyatta University Women's Economic Empowerment Hub, and of course why you need to know about this. In the studio, I am joined by Dr. Regina Mwatha, who is a lecturer. How are you doing this morning?
Very well, thank you.
Karibu sana to the studio. And of course, we also have Dr. Pacifica Okemwa, who's a senior member academic staff at Kenyatta University. How are you doing this morning?
I'm fine, thank you.
And happy new month to both of you. How is the month so far? How are we feeling?
Cold.
Cold. It really is cold. Yes. It really is. And this weather is just erratic, you know. Some days it's hot, some days it's cold, but it's all like, we move. Okay. Yeah. But first of all, let's just begin with you, Dr. Pacifica. When we talk about Kenyatta University Women's Economic Empowerment Hub, quite a mouthful. What exactly is it? Take us through the same.
Wow. This is an initiative that dates back to 2019, 2020,
all right,
when Kenyatta University wrote a grant, and we were blessed, and we got this funding from Bill and Melinda Gates to try and work towards generating data on what really works for women's economic empowerment. And this is informed really by the fact that since independence in this country, there has been one wave after another of initiatives meant to empower women. Okay. But really, women are just at the same level. If you go to the villages, the women are still carrying babies on their backs, firewood on their heads. So what is this empowerment that we have been working towards? And does anybody have any data so that when they are implementing any program, you know, they are literally informed by data that shows exactly what needs to be done? Apparently, most of our decisions are not based on that kind of information. So we thought that one of the things we needed to do is really work towards generating that data. My colleague can add to that.
Yeah, and then of course I'd also want to ask in terms of recently, we've had a lot of talks about women empowerment and how important this is, not only to the women themselves, but also to the community, the society. I mean, first of all, the family, and then the community, and then, of course, on a national scale. But at the same time, in as much as, yes, there's a lot of praises by the same, but there's also a lot of complaint in terms of you women, you've been overly empowered. So can we just understand, first of all, why it is important for women to sort of be empowered? And we've had this conversation over and over again, but there's still a bit of resistance from the same.
Thank you. I think one of the major reasons why we need women empowered is so that they are informed and can make key informed decisions relating first to their family, at the community level where they participate, they're in churches, they're in community activity, but even also at the national level, influencing policy, influencing legislation, and women, because they constitute a high proportion of the population, 52% in Kenya actually, they are part of the society. So it's about inclusivity. And you mentioned about recent debates about their empowerment, you women.
Like you have been overly empowered, where is the boy child, where is this? Yeah.
Of course, in society we need both men and women.
Oh, absolutely.
But for the longest time, and even now, when you look at, just look at any forum where there is key decisions being made, you will find more men. And it is the inclusivity of women that matters, because when key decisions are made, including even relating to policy, it's important to have them because they also contribute to the GDP.
Oh, absolutely.
They pay taxes, so why should they not be involved in key decision making at all levels?
Yeah. All right, so have them at the table, at the decision-making table. But at the same time, of course, there's so many barriers that, you know, women face, even in their quest for empowerment, and even some of the men who are contributing towards women's, you know, empowerment. Of course, there's so many barriers that, you know, come in between. Dr. Pacifica, do you want to take us through some of these barriers that women face?
That's a lovely question and very, very important. You know, some of the barriers women face are so basic, and people do not literally think of these as barriers. Let me give you an example of child care.
All right.
I mean, it's the role of women really, biologically, we give birth and we breastfeed these babies, but society has also ensured childcare is in the hands of women. So it's like from day one, the child belongs to the woman. But how does that child become an obstacle to a woman's empowerment?
All right.
Now, one of the work, one of the researches that we are doing in the Rakanidhi is literally to prove that if a woman has a bit of help with childcare, then she's able to do more market work and she's able to earn more. So childcare is literally an obstacle.
All right.
Yet it is, no one really thinks about it as an obstacle. The other obstacle that I have seen that is often ignored is gender-based violence. Now, there is so much violence happening against women. Granted, part of it is cultural, part of it is about certain organizations that we work in and all that. Now, but look at a woman who, you know, a girl, for starters, who gets pregnant out of being defiled or coerced into sexual relations at a very early age. She loses throughout her life unless somebody comes in and is able to interrupt that kind of loss. You know, that's a lost person. And it's a loss not just to the individual, but also to the community and the nation as a whole. I pay taxes. Why am I paying the taxes? Because I am earning the amount of money I'm earning. But that girl whom we lost a long time ago will not be able to pay those taxes. So we have to think about sexual and gender-based violence at all levels, even at organizations. Look at this girl who gets into an organization as an intern. And guess what happens? She's coerced and she's forced to get into relationships. And then she may even choose, you know, she can't go that direction and loses an opportunity just like that.
Yeah.
Now, that is a barrier for her economic empowerment.
All right.
But how many times do we think like that? Or when somebody is given a job, you know, by virtue of the fact that they were able to comply and somebody else lost, the person who gets the job does not necessarily help the organization because maybe they were not even qualified for it.
In the first
you know,
place,
in the
yeah.
first place. So that is a big barrier that literally has to be overcome. Now, we can go on and on. We have cultural barriers, we have political barriers, we have social barriers that are all, you know, around this, you know, the social organization of societies. And until we are able to understand how do these stand in the way, to what extent, you know, are they standing in the way and what needs to be done? And that is why what we are doing at Kenyatta University is focused on what works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what works and sort of like magnify the same to make sure that there's a lot, you know, of opportunities for these women. But again, Dr. Regina, someone might argue and say some of those things men also go through them, maybe not as equally as women, but they also go through some sort of form of like hurdles and all those things that then they're not able to contribute economically to the economy. I mean, to the, for example, the, you know, the nation or even across the globe. So the question is, why is it that the women's issues or hurdles or some of these barriers are more pronounced as compared to the men? Because majority of the times when we're having these conversations, especially as far as women empowerment, there's usually a lot of resistance and a lot of questions. Why is it that you only talk about the women, what about us as men? But why would you say, you know, for women is more pronounced?
Yeah, it's more pronounced for women because of the, first of all, the social setting upon which we grew in.
Yeah.
With several barriers set for the girl child to begin with.
Right.
There are also cultural factors that also create barriers for the girl child. There are also you know, issues in society that make it difficult for the girl child and women to move on. For instance, let's even start with a young girl. Maybe she gets pregnant in Form 1.
Yeah.
And she doesn't go back to school. The policy in this country allows a girl to go back to school.
Now, yes.
Yeah, if she gives birth. But the parents say, no, you're getting married.
And also there's a lot of stigma even amongst
Yes,
the,
there's a
you
lot
know,
of-
fellow,
yeah.
I would say like the peers as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then the boy goes on with school, goes to university, gets a good job, marries another girl he met in the university, and that one is languishing in
Yeah.
that space. And many of our women, if you look at the transgression from primary to secondary to university, you'll see they almost go almost, you know, almost at par.
Okay.
But then you are left wondering, after Form 4, what happens? Where do the women go?
Yeah.
When you find, for instance, key areas, look, for instance, even at the national parliament, where we have to have quota systems so that
Yes.
women can come on board. So where did all those girls go?
Okay.
And you are left, you have to answer the question, then what would work so that then they are
we
at
have-
par
yes.
with men? Are they starting on the same platform? Is the platform equal for
yeah.
them? It is not.
It is not,
Yeah.
yes. All right, and of course, that's why I think we have a lot of conversations about equality,
Yes.
you know, as well. But at the same time, Dr. Pacifica, there's usually this debate around, fine, these opportunities are there, but then the women themselves, majority of them would not take up these opportunities because, well, I'm a woman. And most of the time, a lot of people would say that women expect these things to just be handed over to them without necessarily having to work so hard to get them. Because since we're talking about equality, why then don't you work as equally as hard as the men to take advantage of these opportunities? What would you say to that in terms of women not going for these opportunities? And this is the group that says we always expect them to be handed to us because we're women.
Wow, that's an interesting question. Yeah. I think I want to pick up from where Dr. Regina stopped. You know, when that girl got pregnant, it could even be another 17-year-old that made her pregnant. Okay. Did he have a mark on his face?
No.
Nothing. He walked away scot-free, and no one would literally use it against him. But let's come to this, this woman. All these obstacles she's facing along the way, from the gender roles that are allocated to her, to the perceptions of who a woman is or should be, you know, they all are an impediment of sorts. So it's like we are beginning a race at the same point, but this woman has so many hurdles that she has to jump over.
Okay.
So it's never equal. It's never equal because of the hurdles society has placed in front of the woman.
Okay.
And so you might even keep on arguing, you know, these opportunities are there. Why aren't women taking
up the opportunities?
By the time I get out of my house as a woman, I have explained to my husband, for example, I have got to go here and there and there and there.
All right.
And sometimes, depending on who that husband might be, they might even say, excuse me, no.
You're not going anywhere.
You're not going anywhere. You know, so I have so many hurdles to deal with, even to vie for a political position. Yeah. You know, I have to, like, go through so many permissions. Now, why isn't anybody wondering why a woman has to go through all those? You know, and yet they're saying the opportunities are there. Why aren't women taking them up?
All right.
Some of these opportunities are appointive, by the way.
Yeah.
And men can have clubs, you know, like boys' clubs where they go and decide in the dead of the night, who takes what, who is going to be in which position. And the woman was not there. She was busy doing her roles
for the
at
family.
home.
And all right, okay. So, and I hear you, but then again, at the same time, I think there's also a question of support, where you'd find that, again, some women are not supportive of their fellow women. And of course, this also brings about a lot of debate in terms of, so you're not supporting one of your own, and here you are crying about women empowerment and all those things. The question is, will we ever achieve the aspect of equality? Because that is what we'd also want to find out after the break, together with an international conference that is coming up in a few days. That is from 6th to 8th of July. Of course, we'll be telling you what the conference is all about. After this short break, stay with us. This is Your World. And of course, it's all about the Women's Economic Empowerment Hub by Kenyatta University. Stay with us. This is Your World.
The Communications Authority of Kenya, CA, regulates the broadcasting industry, promoting development of local content and ensuring responsible use of broadcasting platforms for national good. The Communications Authority of Kenya, opening your world.
News siku hizi kwa station kama zote.
News ikisha, naweza watch Husbands of Kayole.
Daddy, naweza watch TV.
Baadaye Unataka kuwatch nini? Lazima nihakikishe haangali vipindi chafu ama vinavyoendeleza vita na chuki.
The Communications Authority of Kenya, CA, regulates the broadcasting industry, promoting development of local content and ensuring responsible use of broadcasting platforms for national good, to give you and your family choice with a variety of content to enjoy. The Communications Authority of Kenya, opening your world.
Every day, over 15 million members are transforming Africa. Million members, empowered to learn, to grow, to harvest, to lead, to dream. Equity. Karibu member.
You know, I also miss my father.
You were still so small when he left you. How come you miss him?
Some people fight for their dreams.
Remember, you're going to have to finish your studies so you can find a good
Be a
job.
doctor.
Too costly.
Or a lawyer.
It will take too long.
The heart never gives up. Forever My Love.
Forever My Love, in association with Blue Band.
The joy, laughter, and friendship moms bring to the family are irreplaceable, because at the end of the day, nothing feels as good as a mother's love. Blue Band tastes like mama's love.
Over 15 million members are transforming Africa. Equity. Karibu member.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. And of course, the show is Your World. And today we want to understand how important women's economic empowerment is. And of course, there is a hub by Kenyatta University. But also, we have a conference that will be happening from the 6th to 8th of July 2022. And of course, the theme is on women economic empowerment in the 21st century. The question is, what works? Okay, so before we focus on the theme, can we just get to understand more about the hub and of course the approach and the role that the researchers actually do at the hub? So Dr. Regina, do you want to take that?
Yes, thank you. The hub is actually one of the university areas of research. It is actually a women's economic empowerment hub. We do research. Presently, we have 12 studies which focus on different themes to do with women's economic empowerment. For instance, we have women in the economy, where we are looking at women's involvement in government, in governance itself, and leadership in the community. We also have a number of studies focusing on women's mentoring, women and girls mentoring and skilling. And then we are also looking at barriers that make it difficult for women to have economic empowerment. Some of the studies focus entirely on women, and some of the studies are linking a gender perspective where they are looking at the power relations between men and women and how these affect everyday living, how this, including how policy and governance are working for the benefit of equity of both men and women.
Absolutely, because again, it's important to involve both in terms of development of not only the nation but even societies as a whole. So, what is that one thing, or maybe two, or maybe three, Dr. Pacifica, that you've learned throughout research and also data collection? What is that thing that has stood out for you?
Thank you. One of the things that has stood out for me is this empowerment cannot work without men's involvement.
True.
And even when we talk about removal of barriers, from a very basic level, we want to see a situation where even in childcare, men can literally chip in, so that the weight that the woman is carrying is a bit relieved. And the children benefit more, by the way, from the participation of both the mother and the father. And it's so difficult, particularly, to keep complaining about the boy child when the fathers are absent most of the lives of these children, and the child never learned the skills they needed, practically from the father. So I have learned that women's economic empowerment will be achieved if we as men and women in society work together. We can also eliminate almost all these barriers. If men, for example, were able to put themselves in the shoe of that abused girl and ask themselves, suppose this was my daughter, suppose it was my that loved one of mine, what really would I feel about it? And then they would be called, it would be upon them now to try and do everything to remove some of these barriers. But having said that, the other thing that I have learned is the importance of data. There are so many assumptions that we have. Oh my God, so many perceptions that we have. But when you go to the ground and collect data on all these aspects, then you realize what you have held so dear does not even hold any water at all. You have to dismiss it.
Vitu kwa ground ni different, as they say.
Vitu kwa ground ni different. You have to listen to the ground. And once you collect that data, analyze it properly. And don't just stop there. The third thing I have learned is there is a way in which decision making has been made in the past, which has not really been helpful. Because many of these are political decisions. Political decisions are good, but they should really literally be informed by research. So one of the things I have also learned is you have to understand the channels of policy. How does policy work? How do you get your voice heard? And that is so important.
It really is. It really is. And then after all those things, of course, there's an aspect of knowledge sharing, which I think is equally as important, and also good financial practices, right? Because we might have all these opportunities, but then again, if we're not have the knowledge as far as then our finances are concerned, I think that there will be a problem. You want to chime into the same?
Actually, one of the studies is looking at gender responsive budgeting.
Okay.
And that's so key for the way planning is done.
It's done, yeah.
By both national and county government, and the involvement of women, because money goes with planning. So the data actually comes out very clearly on, for instance, they look at the budget, they look at what did Bwananchi want. And those comparisons really tell a story. Look, they are not just doing women, they are looking at gender responsive budgeting.
Yeah, all right. So, and of course, on that note, let's talk about then the conference, because again, like we say, we're trying to understand what exactly works. Because like Dr. Pacifica said early on, some of these decisions were made a long time ago that no longer work now. And of course, since the theme again is on women economic empowerment in the 21st century, what works? Why exactly this theme? But of course, let's just start first of all with the conference in itself. What is it all about? What are you looking to cover, and why the theme?
Actually, for the first time, the university has stopped being the ivory tower.
Okay.
It has moved down to the people, both men and women. And that's what we are, of why this hub asks what works, because our research focuses on what are people saying, what are men and women saying, what are they saying works for them. And that's why we are looking at that. But most of all, the studies that are being carried out, one of the key outcomes is to inform policy and legislation in this country. And therefore, the conference is being used as a platform where we are interacting with government, both county and national. We're interacting with other stakeholders, civil society, private sector. They are all involved in the conference. We have international guests, some of them from the US, the UK, basically Europe, and a lot of African countries too. And we are all asking, what is it that works for women's economic empowerment? And exchanging the ideas, networking, plus coming up with real facts that would really inform policy and direction of legislation in the country. Just to mention that the hub is working also in partnership with the Ministry for Public Service and Gender, especially the State Department for Gender, and therefore, because of this partnership, we give data that we get through policy briefs to the department, and that way we hope that we can bridge the gap between policy and lack of data.
Absolutely, because again, like we said earlier on, data is very important. And I like the fact that you're not only taking this data or doing all this research and then just giving it to yourselves, but also sharing as well to help in one way or the other, and especially when it comes to enforcing some of those laws and policies that we have in the country. But Dr. Pacifica, can we just understand the policies that we have? Because every single day we talk about how we have some of these best laws, we have some of the best policies, but now when it comes to implementing those policies is where we usually have a big problem. So what are some of these policies that we're looking at, and you know, what do you think will be done to make sure that at the end of the day these policies are implemented and the people on the ground, like you said, get to benefit?
Wow, this country has many policies. In fact, there is a joke that there are countries in Africa, they don't develop policies. They just check around and see, did Kenya do it? They pick it out and go implement. But that's a joke. I don't know whether it's true. But let's look at the specifics. Now, for example, the legislations on gender-based violence from the 2006 Sexual Offences Act, which is so comprehensive. And there is even a framework on how these policies is supposed to work. But guess what? During COVID, the number of women and girls that were exposed to gender-based violence was so high.
Really short, yeah.
It really short. So what is it that is the problem? Now, so it means that we have to look at some of these policies in terms of what would make them work.
All right.
And that is where data comes in.
Okay.
We have, we mentioned earlier about the policy that allows a girl that gets pregnant to go back to school.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just a good recommendation which has been very difficult to enforce because of social and cultural factors, including stigma against this child. So she goes there and everybody's treating her like, hey, you're a mother, you should be breastfeeding or something like that. What are you doing in school? Yeah. You know, so that's a good example of some of the policies that we have. We have the 2/3 gender rule.
Discussion that has been there.
But you go to management boards and you find that selection of who sits in those boards is still not meeting that 2/3 gender rule. And if sometimes the people who are placed there are also just selected, you know, in a very interesting manner. Not to say that they don't fit, but you know, somebody is just looking for a figurehead, a woman to place there. And so one of the researches that we are doing literally is to bring out how these boards work. You know, what is it that goes on in there? How would the 2/3 gender rule, for example, change that? And what is important is that every time we have both women and men, the needs and concerns of both are catered for.
Absolutely.
You know, both the strategic needs and the practical needs, they are catered for. But when we have a situation where we are only looking at one group and not the other, then it's very difficult for gender equity and equality to be achieved.
Absolutely.
So in every area, we have literally good policies that would be helpful. But these have just remained on the shelves.
Oh, yes. And we want them to be enforced as soon as yesterday, you know, so that we see a bit of change, you know, and improvement in terms of how those things are handled. And Dr. Regina, since, of course, you ask these questions and you go out to the people and talk to them and get to understand what exactly works for you and what doesn't and what do you need to see change, what is it that the people are seeing on the ground that works for them?
They're saying several things, and I'm sure Pacifica will add some of those. Like, I recall in one of the stakeholders validation where we were discussing women in the manufacturing sector. And because we invite even those stakeholders like women in manufacturing, some of the things they were saying, they said, as women, we operate under the radar.
Okay.
Because you go and register your company. You are told you need this and this and this, and you register.
Okay.
And then you start operating. And then you are told, no, you need this. No, you needed to register on this. You needed, and they actually said, we want a Huduma center of our, you know, even if we go to the Huduma center, and they say, like, the Huduma Center is a very good space for them. They say, we want to walk to Huduma Center and register once and for all and start operating. Because you can see already they are saying we don't have adequate knowledge.
You don't want surprises later on.
They don't have adequate knowledge on what they need to register. So and you see at this fora, the stakeholders include government, so they listen and they can hear what the women are saying. In some other instances, I've had women, there's this project on KEOP where they are looking at the mentoring and skilling on KEOP. You know the project of KEOP, the partnership between the government and World Bank. And the young people say, okay, we finished, but we don't have the certificate. So you can already see a good program, but they're saying we don't have the certificate, so we cannot function. So basically the young people, they're just saying we want the certificate.
Yeah.
So you find it's so helpful because it's looking at what is going on, what's the program, and what are the experiences, lived experiences of the people. They are doing a research on barriers on gender-based violence, so I don't want to talk about that. Maybe I would like to talk about that.
Yeah, the whole question of collecting data from survivors of gender-based violence has taught us so much. I mean, when a woman, for example, has gone through domestic violence, which is very common, we assume that maybe if she went to hospital and she's treated of the wounds, that is the end of the story. But what the women are saying is that the psychological impact of that violence is so big, and that violence does not come, you know, like all of a sudden. It would begin with maybe a bit of abuse, one slap here, you know, and repeated emotional abuse, which takes so long. By the time this woman is being beaten to an extent of finding herself in the hospital, she has lived through so much violence. So some of the things that we have been told is that many of the programs that government has put in place, for example, does not begin to scratch the surface in terms of helping this woman recover. Because we are looking at a woman who has suffered, you know, so many forms of violence all in one.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we focus on maybe physical healing, when there is psychological, when there is social, when there is economic. So many of our participants are saying, look at these things holistically. Look at even the impact of this kind of violence on our children. Imagine when our children grow up knowing that my mother suffered this much. That impacts that child throughout their life.
Absolutely.
So don't just focus on helping me recover. Help my child recover as well.
I like that. And of course, most of the time we usually see a case of, we hope the perpetrator will be brought to book, and then once they are, end of story. But I like what you're saying. Look at it holistically and see what works. Okay.
If I can add something.
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
One thing during the stakeholder engagement that caught my attention, and that report, is that women were asked, why did it take you? They take about 7 years before they come out of it and speak about it. And they are asked, why did you take so long? And they said, this is where I was able to lean on, that my children could feed, that I could have a roof and some food for my children, basic, which means she is not economically able.
Empowered,
If she was economically able, she would have got out of it earlier.
And it's not easy. Sometimes I think as a society we tend to judge, you know, harshly some of these women. Again, both men and women who choose to stay. This says that, why don't you leave? Why don't you do this? Why? Until you're in that person's shoe, you will understand the decisions that they make. And of course, one of them, among some of those things, is knowledge. Which again, like you're saying, approach it holistically so that we can even prevent. Not wait until something happens is when we say, by the way, this is what you can do. Work on also the prevention of the same. You wanna add on to that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, one of the beauties of the work that we are doing on gender-based violence is we are not stopping at collecting data from survivors. We are also implementing a program in the Rakanithi, which looks at prevention. So now we are not focusing on survivors, we are going to the community and we are saying, okay, this thing happens in our families, in our homes, in our communities, and in our county. Can we have reflect circles where we begin to talk about gender-based violence. And these circles will bring together men, women, the police, the religious leaders, everybody within communities in small circles of about 15 to 20 people. And the role of those 20 people will be to read a manual that we have developed on understanding gender-based violence. How it starts, how it impacts on every member, and even that perpetrator, by the way. It's not enough to say, let's take that perpetrator to court and throw them to the cell and let them rot there. That perpetrator is a father, that perpetrator is a husband, that perpetrator is somebody's son. And the community itself may even protect that person from the law enforcement. So we want to see how can that knowledge then help both the perpetrator and the survivor and the community as a whole be able to prevent gender-based violence
altogether. I like that. So then what are some of the expected outcomes from this conference, so that we just don't talk about it? We see action. So what are some of the expected outcomes?
Some of the expected outcomes, of course, is that as scholars, we shall have publications in journal, refereed journal articles. We have a partnership with the University of Nairobi, WeHub, led by Professor Wajiko Kabira, and we are publishing together that work. But the other one is that the interaction and networking with the different stakeholders, civil society, government, private sector, key policy areas, and where we are looking at programs. And those programs, we are highlighting gaps, you know, like the ones we've mentioned. Then they are able to listen to that, and we are able to come up with also policy briefs. For that, we are doing advocacy in partnership with Action Aid. There's other institutions that we've come up together, many of them, and we are advocating, we are doing advocacy for the policy, either to fill in a gap or to develop a policy in totality.
I like that. And of course, is it open to the public in terms of like participants? What will be happening?
We started this process some time back. So what's happening is that people are registering. You go to the Kenyatta University Women's Economic Empowerment Hub, you register, there is a fee to it because we are providing just to meet basic needs, water, tea, food, just that, because we are meeting that, and the university cannot afford to feed everyone, so people register. But for giving out your paper is free. Giving you space to talk is free. Basically, it's those things that the cost we omit. And then we publish the work. We are in partnership with an international body known as Women Economic Empowerment Co-op, Community of Practice. And we are looking to see how this can be, this has an international outlook, so that there is influence of policy also at higher levels, like AU, IMF, World Bank.
And international as well. All right. But then again, how then can we also sort of pick what, and especially from the West, because like you said, we not only have like speakers from within, but also, you know, across different parts of the globe. But how then can we learn and take the lessons in terms of what they've done to probably get to where they are, especially amongst, as far as women's economic empowerment is concerned, and localize it so that we also get, because most of the time we see some of the policies that work in the West might not necessarily work, you know, for us. So Dr. Pacifica, what do you think are some of the best ways that we can learn?
That's a very good question. By the way, we are partnering with a lot of universities in the West. Yale University is one of them. And what they did at the start was to train us, you know, like empower the researchers. which was very good. For the first time, I sat in a class of economics and I didn't feel out of place. I literally learned.
Yes.
But one of the ways that we can take these best practices is literally by working together. You see, this Women Economic Empowerment Hub brings in practitioners. Like the conference is bringing in a lot of practitioners. You know, a lot of people running shelters, a lot of people running different programs for women, they're going to be there. What is the whole idea? That they listen in and be able to pick up the lessons. And these lessons are not just local. They are also from all these international actors.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so it's open literally. Even you can go to the website, register, pay the fee, and come in and listen. You know, you will learn something.
You will. You will. And also share that knowledge you know, to the people around you. All right.
Fact,
So
the other thing that happened is that, like Yale, the professors there are in partnership with our research. We are also in partnership with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. So they are also helping us a lot with the statistics, being the national institution that deals with statistics in this country. The Institute of Economic Affairs is with us. So it's a lot of exchange. We also have University of San Diego working with us. So they are not just coming to the conference, they've been working with us for the last 2 years.
Yeah, and of course we hope that we will see you know, change as you know, in the near future, not wait until I don't know when from the conference. So thank you very much for coming today, Dr. Regina Mwatha, who's a lecturer KU, as well as Dr. Pacifica Kemwa, senior member academic staff at Kenyatta University. And of course, remember the conference will be happening from 6th to 8th of July 2022 with the theme Women Economic Empowerment in the 21st Century. What works? So we have to close it here. Ladies, thank you for coming by today. And of course, thank you for staying with us as well until the end of the conversation. I believe that you've learned a lot from this conversation. And of course, you will also transfer that knowledge to someone who is next to you. And of course, together, let's empower women in all ways, even economically, all right? And not only women, but also men as well. Okay, so have yourselves a lovely day ahead. I'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place, right here on Your World. But until then, have yourselves a lovely day ahead. And of course, a special thanks to everyone who put together and made sure that the show is a success. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.